It's May 27, 2025. This is a Prescott City Council voting meeting. Thank you all for attending. Obviously, we must have some items on the agenda that you find particularly stimulating. So I'm glad you're here. Mayor Pro Tem, you have any introductions or announcements?
Yes, I do. First of all, congratulations to Patrick Grady on his new appointment to City Council, and welcome. Patrick, you'll be a seatmate for a while. Item number 2 is City Council will hold a special meeting to discuss the general plan on Tuesday, June 3rd at 11:30 a.m. right here in our new council chambers. We hope you can join us for this important discussion. If you cannot attend in person, you can view the meeting on the City of Prescott Facebook page, City of Prescott YouTube channel, or the public access channel on Sparklight TV. Let's see, number 3, here's a reminder about the new appointment-based bulk pickup program. Each residential trash customer qualifies for 1 complimentary collection per calendar year. Pre-registration is required and will begin on June 2nd, 2025. The new appointment-based bulk collection is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Register online for your pickup at prescottrecycles.com. Get confirmation and instructions from our team. Set out your items by 6 a.m. on your scheduled date. Commercial businesses and communities on dumpster service are not eligible for this service. For more information, go to prescottrecycles.com. Another reminder that the City Council Subcommittee on Appointments is currently seeking applications from citizens who are interested in serving on the following boards, commissions, and committees. We need somebody for the Building Safety Advisory and Appeals Board, and we need a person for the Fire Board of Appeals, and another person for Tourism Advisory Committee. Boards, commissions,
Yes,
and
we
committees. Sorry. Boards, commissions, and committees provide opportunities for citizens to take an active role in their local government. Applications are due to the city by 5 p.m. on Friday, May 30th, 2025. For more information, visit the city's website at City of Prescott Boards, Commissions, and Committees, vacancies, or contact the city clerk's office at 928-777-1437. And that's it, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. We'll now have an invocation from Pastor Scott Savage with the Prescott Cornerstone Church, followed by a Pledge of Allegiance conducted by Councilwoman Furworth.
Would you bow your head with me? Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the privilege that it is to call Prescott our home. We're grateful for this beautiful community, and we're grateful that you led us here. We pray today for our leaders as they evaluate decisions before them. We pray that you would fill them with a selfless servant's heart. We pray that you would help them to make the decision that is in the best interest of our community. And we pray that you'd help them to embody your words when you told us that whoever wants to be great must become the servant of all. We pray that you would guide them with your wisdom, and we pray that our city would continue to enjoy great leadership. And we pray that you'd help us to put the needs of our neighbors above our own. Thank you for the blessing that it is to call this place home. Thank you for your beautiful creation. Help us to be good stewards of it. And we give this meeting to you. May it honor you. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Given the week of Memorial Day, please join me in honoring those that gave all to protect this flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've called this to order, so we'll have a roll call now.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Here.
Councilwoman Fruworth.
Here.
Councilman Gambogi.
I am here.
Councilman Grady.
Here.
Councilman Montoya.
Still here?
And Councilman Moore.
Here.
All are present. And before we get started with the business on council's agenda today, I did want to make a couple of announcements. Number one, as many of you are aware, this chambers is new. A lot of work and time went into it, and we would like to kindly request that you not eat or drink in the chambers. If you have a water bottle or something like that, that's okay. But outside of that, let's not bring food or beverages into the council chambers. Additionally, I want to remind everyone that public comment on agenda items is restricted to 3 minutes. If you could please have your comments prepared when you come up so that you can get through your 3 minutes, so the mayor doesn't have to remind you, that would be fantastic. And I also would like to set the stage given our last meeting. I know that there's a couple of items that some people might have very strong opinions about. I ask that you please be respectful to the council, to the other members of the public that are in here, and to our staff. And now we can get to our proclamations. First up, we have National Public Works Week, May 18th to the 24th.
Some of those in the back, there are seats up here. This is really special for me. Having retired from Caterpillar, I spent a lot of time with the kinds of people that work for Gwen. So, whereas public works professionals operate and maintain infrastructure and facilities while providing services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health and safety, a high quality of life and well-being of citizens of Prescott. And whereas the theme of 2025 National Public Works Week is People, Purpose, and Presence, and whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are workers, specialists, operators, and keep coming in, engineers, managers, inspectors, and support staff who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our city's transportation and streets, water, wastewater, solid waste, and fleet systems essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens of Prescott to gain knowledge of and understand the importance of public works projects and programs in the community. Now, therefore, I, Phil Good, Mayor of the City of Prescott, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th, 2025 through May 24th, 2025 as National Public Works Week, to recognize the contributions which public works staff makes every day to our health, safety, comfort, and quality, and the fact that once a year they have a breakfast that I went to last week is really good stuff. So, Gwen, one of my favorite people, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Good, members of the council, and the citizens of Prescott. This year's theme for National Public Works Week is People, Purpose, and Present. It highlights 3 cornerstone ideals that motivate public works professionals to serve in their community every single day. Meeting the needs of people is what gives us a sense of purpose. Many times, public works professionals will never meet those whose lives have been impacted because when things are going right, no one knows public works is here. But with or without fanfare, we're always present, working in the background to advance the quality of life for all. This year, in addition to it being Public Works Week, the Yavapai County Contractors Association highlighted the work that Public Works does throughout Yavapai County. That included Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, the City of Prescott, and Yavapai County. This is your copy, Ted. Each member of the council got a copy. I'm on the front cover, but only because I'm short. Was I in the front? When I was trying to put together what I was going to speak about today, The one thing that came to mind most to me was the presence of Public Works and how we go about our business every single day, mostly without notice. I will tell you that close to a dozen times every single month, I receive emails from members of the community about the good works of this group. I'd like to read just a couple of them to you because I don't want to take a lot of time. I got an email regarding an 80-year-old citizen that had just had her knee replaced and was struggling to get her trash out on Peace Lane. She called to compliment both drivers as they got out of the truck and helped her with her trash and recycling. She was truly blown away at their kindness and smiles when they helped her with her trash. She wanted us to know that we have a great team, and she very much appreciated our help and assistance. Another caller from Rustic Timbers called to brag about how outstanding his trash service is and how helpful and personable our drivers are. He said, "We probably don't get very many good calls, so he wanted us to have something to celebrate that day." He's not wrong. In the water department, all too often I shouldn't say it that way. The customer wrote in, Don and Kathy Miller wrote in to say that all too often good customer service is hard to find, and when it is, recognition can be slow to come. With that in mind, we want to commend the city's water department. When their taps stopped flowing at 8 p.m., after verifying this was a neighborhood issue, they left voice messages on the main phone line expecting someone to pick it up during business hours, not expecting someone to pick it up outside of business hours. Within minutes, though, they had a phone call and an email letting them know that the city was responding and would get their problem fixed as soon as possible. While repair time was certainly commendable in less than 2 hours, especially on a very cold night, it was the response to their inquiry from the team that made the biggest impression on us. Thank you for taking the time to communicate with your customers, even during off hours. Another citizen said, "I wanted to share that by happenstance, a week or so after you put my new water meter in and I started using the new Ion Water app on my computer, I found that I had a leak and I was able to fix it, saving who knows how much water. Good going and thank you." The wastewater team gave a tour of the wastewater treatment plant to the 5th grade class. This lady wrote in to say that her 5th grade class was visiting there today. Her daughter's name was Sophia. She wanted to thank them and their team and tell them how awesome it is that you provide tours for children. A customer on Cricket Circle called to say how happy she was with the team that came out and trimmed the trees near her property. They were very kind and spoke with her about the job and really took their time making sure that it was done right. She just wanted to say thank you. And finally, a gentleman wrote in, "I'm a retired highway engineer specializing in pavement work and worked for the Federal Highway Administration for nearly 30 years. I'm writing today because of your contact about the work on Harton Street. I've been wanting to compliment the city for a long time on your reconstruction of several streets I use and observe. I think you've done a great job on the reconstruction of Park Avenue, Mount Vernon, Alarcon, East Goodwin, South Summit, just to name a few that I use regularly. Especially Park Avenue, the old WPA concrete had served its purpose. The historic lighting was really a nice touch too, and I'm anxious for the overlay of Whipple and Montezuma, which we finished 2 weeks ago, by the way, and it turned out awesome. Also, I note the pavement preservation work going on by most agencies ignore pavement preservation work. I live on Oaklawn Drive, which was recently slurried. Thank you to everyone responsible for the good work. Joe Masuko." So it's for this and so many more reasons that we celebrate National Public Works Weeks, and we give thanks to the people who give us essential services every single day, mostly when we don't even notice.
Hey, John, I'm going to bring the group in. Collapse in here. No, Gwen. I'm going to represent it to you again. So let's put this here. Step over here. Collapse. Collapse means come closer.
Act like you like each other.
Come.
And I'll also say this is only about 1/3 of the staff in this department.
You got everybody in? Okay.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot, guys.
You should stay. Thank you. Thanks for coming down, guys. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks for coming down. Sit.
Very good. We'll now move on to the proclamation, no, the presentation for recognition of wildfire risk manager Conrad Jackson.
Nice. That's what I like to see. All right, Mayor and Council, Hogarder Fire Chief, it is my honor to be here today. Approximately 2 years ago, I was in front of many of you, and we cast forward a significant pivot in our preparation and adaptation for wildfire. And one of those things was to hire a wildfire risk manager whose job it would be to strategically direct all of the efforts that have been going on in the city for a long time. As you know, the city of Prescott has always led in efforts around wildfire mitigation and prevention. We were in the early phases of the Wildland Urban Interface Code back in the 80s and 90s. Obviously, we have a proud history with the Grand Mountain Hotshots and all the mitigation and suppression efforts that they have done. And this is a continuation of that work. Well, this has come full circle, and I am really proud to be here today because I feel like this is long overdue. We're going to show you a brief video here that highlights some of the work that Conrad has done. And once we watch that video and that video is over, I'd like to take a quick moment and present Conrad with a token of my appreciation for all the work that he has done over the last year and a half in his role. So I don't know if that video is ready to cue. Give it just a second here. All right. So I think that video sums it up very nicely. And it's very important that you know that that is an instance that repeats itself numbers of times on a daily basis in this community. It also really highlights the why, not just of public safety, but really, in my opinion, what public government is intended to do. Conrad and the role that he plays in the program that he's in makes lives easier in this community. And that is in large part because of the kind of person that we have in that role. So with that, I'd like to invite him to come up here for a second so I can read this letter to him and then present him this certificate of recognition. All right. On behalf of the Prescott Fire Department, I'm honored to recognize and thank you for your trailblazing leadership and outstanding contributions as wildfire risk manager during your tenure so far. Your innovative and engaging approach has made a profound difference in our community. From educating residents to helping businesses and homeowners navigate the often complex insurance landscape, your work has not only raised awareness, but also strengthened our collective resilience. Thanks to your dedication, Prescott is becoming better adapted to live with wildfire, not just react to it. You've turned a daunting challenge into a shared opportunity for growth, learning, and adaptation. Please accept this letter as a heartfelt token of our appreciation. Your work continues to inspire, inform, and protect. We're grateful for your service and proud to work alongside someone so deeply committed to the well-being of our community. With sincere gratitude. And what I told Conrad when he took this role is that he had a large mission, a very large mission. And I can happily report to you that he has more than risen to that challenge. The mission is not yet accomplished. It never is. But man, we are surely on the way because of this gentleman to my left. I really want to thank him in front of you and in front of the public for all the work that he's done so far. Thank you.
My wife wants to get one. What's that? No, I don't need to make comments. You need to make comments? I don't need to.
Well, I just want to say that I couldn't be more proud. Your impact on this community has been so broad and so important. It's just great to have you doing what you're doing, and I know you love doing it, and we love having you do it. So thank you very much.
Take my family with me so you can have your seats. Thank you, everyone. You have a great day.
All right, we'll move on now to the open call to the public. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address the council regarding matters that are not included on the posted agenda during the call to the public. If you wish to speak, please complete a green speaker card and submit it to me prior to the meeting being convened. As a reminder, speakers are limited to 4 minutes, and the call to the public will be limited to 40 minutes in total, with the following stipulations. Citizens are limited to addressing the council on the same topic only 4 times in total. If a topic has been addressed more than 5 times by different speakers, the mayor may limit future discussions on this topic, and topics of a primarily national concern may be limited at the discretion of the mayor. I do have 2 public open call cards today. The first one is from Ralph Hess.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am Ralph Hess from Prescott, and I've submitted a petition pursuant to Prescott City Charter together with a resolution that I'll address here in a moment. So the Prescott City Council passed resolution number 2023-1873 on December 12th, 2023, condemning Hamas, a U.S. designated foreign terrorist, i.e. criminal organization, and declaring unwavering support for the state of Israel in reaction to Hamas fighters crossing the border between Gaza and Israel on October 7th, and reportedly killing more than 1,200 people and capturing hostages from a variety of countries, including the United States. On that date, on December 12, 2023, the State of Israel was engaged in responsive attacks upon the Palestinian population in Gaza, which does not have any military forces and has been engaged in ongoing attacks on the Palestinian population, resources, and infrastructure for more than 19 months. Recently, Israel has permitted restricted aid to be delivered to portions of Gaza. The death toll inflicted by the State of Israel now reportedly exceeds 50,000 Palestinian men, women, and children, more than the population of Prescott. In a recent Time article, Miranda Jarrett-Nam wrote, quote, pro-Palestinian activists and several humanitarian groups, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, as well as the United Nations, have described Israel's campaign in Gaza as genocide. Both anti-Jewish and anti-Muslim hate crimes in 42 major U.S. cities rose last year, according to preliminary data collected by California State University San Bernardino professor Brian Levin, who founded the university's Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism. Anti-Jewish hate crimes rose 12%, and anti-Muslim hate crimes rose 18% from 2023 to 2024, against a general decline of hate crimes more broadly, end quote. My proposed resolution does not describe Israel's ongoing attacks upon the Palestinian population, resources, and infrastructure as genocide. And this proposed resolution does not rescind resolution number 2023-1873, which of course you can do. What this proposed resolution does is confirms the humanity and fundamental decency of both the Israeli and Palestinian peoples. Confirm Prescott law enforcement's duty to remain vigilant in protecting all persons, including Israeli Americans, Jewish Americans, Palestinian Americans, Muslim Americans, and supporters of the State of Israel and Palestine from acts of crime and harassment, and confirm Prescott law enforcement's
You have 20 seconds.
duty to remain vigilant in protecting all persons, including Israeli Americans, Jewish Americans, Palestinian Americans, Muslim Americans, and all their supporters from infringement of their freedom of expression guaranteed by the United States and State of Arizona constitutions. Thank you.
Jim Orr.
Hello, Mr. Mayor, Council, Jim Orr, Prescott Lakes Community Association Board of Directors. Your reverberation is a little odd, isn't it? I'm here today briefly just to tell you about the power of cooperation, specifically as it refers to the Prescott Lakes Development Agreement, but perhaps with this audience today in general. Mayor Good, Councilwoman Furworth, Mayor Pro Tem Kennelly, without your leadership on this issue, I don't believe we would have been able to come to agreement on the major points, which we did. Mr. Kimball, thank you for your leadership of staff. Mr. Young, pains me to say this about an attorney, but thank you for your leadership on this. For the first time in the history of the agreement, we have a clear path forward if somebody presents a project. I believe that the process that we engaged in with you all could be used as an example for other processes. because it was one that we all agreed upon, that we were here to, be involved in a solution, not kick the can down the road. So we appreciate all that you do on behalf of our 3,200 members and really on behalf of citizens in general. Thank you all for engaging in the back and forth. Thank you for engaging in problem solving, and we're really, really grateful to be partners with you all. Thank you.
Jerry Garvey.
Good afternoon. My name is Jerry Garvey. I'm here to speak on behalf of Attorney Hess's petition and resolution, mostly because I'm a strong believer as a citizen and a leader in this community. I've led many nonprofits in this community in our 23 years of living here. I believe that in any conflict, either personal, community, or if it's a war across the other side of the earth, our job as leaders is to find truth and reconciliation, not to choose sides. Once we choose sides, Once we choose sides, we perpetuate the conflict. Truth meaning that we research and we investigate. And we do not listen to antidotes, because antidotes are the opposite of facts. And reconciliation, bringing groups together and having them discuss truth and finding ways in which we can support reconciliation and peace. I believe that's our job in this community and around the world, and I hope you agree.
That's all, Mayor.
Very good. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Does any member of the council want to pull any item off of the consent agenda? Hearing none, then I will entertain a motion on the remaining items.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
All right, we'll move on to item 10, the consent ordinance.
Bear with me, I've got a few to read here. First up is adoption of ordinance number 2025-1889, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the granting of an underground utility easement to Arizona Public Service Company for new utility service on city property, authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said underground utility easement. Adoption of ordinance number 2025-1887, authorizing the acceptance of 5 easements, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of 4 public sewer easements and 1 maintenance easement from the affected property owners of the Wildwood Gravity Sewer Improvement Project, and authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said agreement or easements. Adoption of ordinance number 2025-1895, and an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the release and thereby abandonment of 3 sewer easements from the affected property owners of the Wildwood Gravity Sewer Improvement Project, authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said easements, and adoption of ordinance number 2025-1888, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the acceptance of a public water line easement from the Word of Life Church Assembly of God, authorizing the mayor and staff to execute any and all documents to effectuate said easements.
That was really good. Does anyone want to pull any of those items for discussion? We could also move to approve all of them in mass.
Mayor, I move to approve all of them in mass.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Well, that took a lot less time than you reading. Thank you very much. We'll now move to the regular agenda.
Continued item, approval of city contract number 2025-155 with Born to be Wild Adventures Tours and Rentals LLC for boat rental concessions at Watson and Goldwater Lakes for a concession fee of 10% of gross revenue from all rentals paid monthly to the city of Prescott.
Councilman Moore?
If there's a presentation by staff first, I'd like to hear that, and then I'd like to be recognized. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So as you are aware, the city has a contract for kayak rental at Watson and Goldwater Lakes. That current agreement goes through July 14th of this year. As we were approaching the end of that contract, there was a competitive solicitation process that occurred for a successor agreement. In that process, staff also attempted to correct a past practice of issuing special event permits for regular operation of kayak rentals at the two lakes. At the May 13 meeting, there were some questions about that process and the transparency and legitimacy of that process. The city attorney and I have investigated the claims that were made and provided a memo detailing our findings and some alternatives to the council. I wasn't planning on going point by point, but if that's something you're interested in, we can do that. The conclusion that we came to was that the procurement process was followed, that it was a legitimate bid process. And therefore, the recommendation from staff would be to move forward with the recommendation of that process to award the contract as recommended through the competitive procurement. If there are other, did I miss anything, Joe? Again, if there's other questions or discussions or direction the council would like to give at this point, we're happy to answer those. But that's just a quick summary of our findings at this point.
Councilman Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Kimball. I know that I was probably the main voice on this issue when we met 2 weeks ago, and I do appreciate the city manager and the city attorney meeting with Matt Moritz to discuss with him this situation. And I want to make a couple statements. First, I want to say that the city allowed Mariah to operate, and so Mariah wasn't doing anything that she wasn't permitted to do. And I think that's really important to state that. I also want to state that I think that, as pointed out in the memo provided to city council members, that while Prescott Outdoors Agreement did not require exclusivity, Born to be Wild was operating with the consent of the city, but the special event permit as a vehicle for continuous operations was problematic and should not be continued. And so I felt that while Prescott Outdoor Rentals had a contract, it was improper for the city to issue a special use permit that allowed Mariah continuous operation at that location. And in the memo that we were given as city council members, there were three alternative options to resolution of this situation. One was to award the contract to Born to be Wild. One was to not award a contract. And the other was to award two non-exclusive contracts. So I'd like to share the comments from this. It says, while the special events permit is not an appropriate vehicle for regular business, awarding two contracts could be a viable compromise. As the past 7 years have shown, there is sufficient customer base at Watson and Goldwater Lakes to support both businesses. Based on a meeting with Mr. Moritz, Prescott Outdoors would be satisfied with a 2-contract solution. If council wishes to go this route, staff would request clear direction to award 2 contracts, 1 to each bidder, and would extend Prescott Outdoors' contract in the short term while the logistics of 2 contracts is worked out between the parties. And I feel that is a fair resolution to the way the situation's been handled improperly for 7 years. And I want to share those thoughts. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Gambogi.
After the last meeting and the turnout here in our council chambers, I followed up on this, and my sense is from the plethora of emails that I've received that there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there. So, Dallin, I would ask that you go through those points so everyone here in the room and everyone listening online can know.
Okay, sure. So one of the questions that we dug into was the question about the number of evaluators in the room. And there was a conversation at the May 13th meeting that there were 4 evaluators, but one of them didn't score or only scored partial. What we found was that there were 4, let me just go as the broadest. There were 5 people in the room. 3 of those people were evaluators as part of the process. One of the 4th person in the room was the department director, who was monitoring, making sure the process went the way that it was supposed to go. They chose, or they're not an evaluator. The 5th person in the room was a member of our procurement staff, again, making sure that procurement occurred the way that it was supposed to occur. So there were 3 evaluators from 3 different departments to make sure that it's not a bias or swayed process in any way. There's a question about whether evaluators read the proposals. Well, we can't, there's not evidence either way that somebody did or didn't read a proposal. What we can say is that of those who were in the room, none of them, let me say it the other way, all of them said that they did read the proposals, and all of them stated that no one claimed that they had not read the proposals. That's not evidence, but it's the feedback we got from those who were in the room. There was a question about the special event permit as a violation of the Prescott Outdoors agreement, and no, that did not violate the agreement, nor did it make the Born to be Wild an irresponsible bidder. That refers primarily to the proposal package itself, with the phrase responsible bidder. And there's no violation there, or nothing that would disqualify Born to be Wild from being considered for a contract. There was some question about the tenure or the role of experience or loyalty in the procurement process. That's something we want to be really careful about. So in the course of having an agreement for a number of years, there's potential to understand the business and have a little bit better advantage when you're putting in a proposal of what the city's looking for, what would be the best to propose. But loyalty in and of itself is something we want to be very careful actually not to reward in a procurement process, right? That's where you start to drift into corruption, basically. And so loyalty in and of itself is not a criteria that we use to evaluate. But experience with the vendor may lead to a higher score on one of the categories if they're able to respond based on their experience. There was an assertion that staff was refusing to communicate with Prescott Outdoors. That doesn't appear to be true. So one of the assertions was that the city manager refused to meet. The city manager did not refuse to meet, but I was busy that day and I had to meet on a different day. And there was an assertion about a public information request. Mr. Morris did not have a public information request. He has a colleague who did, and the city clerk had spoken with that person at least 3 times prior to the meeting. There were questions about the, let me see. This kind of been covered a little bit, but in relation to the special events permit, there is, again, that is a concern to where, as was read, that's not the way we'd like to move forward. Special events permit should be for special events and not for regular operations. And that's been addressed through the competitive procurement process, and all of the alternatives resolve that particular question. And then 3 options for the council. So finding a valid procurement process has taken place. The council can award the contract to Born to be Wild as recommended. The council could decide that we're not going to award a contract right now, and that would allow the contract that Prescott Outdoors has goes through mid-July, July 14th. The special events permit that has been issued to Born to be Wild goes through the end of the year, and then council could give direction on a new procurement process or leaving the lake to fishermen or whatever the council would like to do in that case. Or the council could award 2 non-exclusive contracts. This also requires a little bit of work because each vendor submitted a proposal assuming exclusivity at the lake. And so we would not get the benefits, or at least all of the benefits of those proposals. But we could negotiate a way that the lakes could be shared, and we could move forward with 2 vendors, at least for the time being. And that could be, if there's specific direction on the term, again, we could follow that direction. I'll turn again to Joe to see if he's got any other.
No, I don't think so. We spent quite a bit of time delving into the process. If you have any specific questions, we can answer those, but you have the memo and the options.
So I hope everyone can see, and those of you that are watching online, that this was a pretty watertight evaluation process. And the concern I have is that we're running the risk of impugning all future contracts that are protested. So I think it's really important that you now know the concerns and objections and the, quote, conspiracy theories, unquote, that are out there. We have an answer for them, and I think we need to be very careful how we handle this for not just this contract, but for future contracts.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with a lot of what Ted just said. Right now, we're talking about a concessionary agreement for a kayak, process at the lake. I'll be honest, I've used that kayaking service. I don't know which one. It was good. But we went through a competitive bid process. The city manager has answered questions about whether that competitive bid process was fair. It sounds like it was to me. I spoke with the former recreation service director, who was the 4th person who was part of that process. He said he excluded his responses because he felt that they might be tainted by perception of his having favoritism over one or the other. My sense is that if he had been part of that scoring process, the scoring process would have been more tilted towards the person who won the contract. And I just want to clarify that. That's speculation on my part. I have no idea. But I think the real risk we run is that we run competitive bid process on a lot of really important things. And I'm not trying to minimize kayaks at the lake, but we do road construction here too. And so if we break a competitive bid process and say that if you come here and make enough noise with your friends, that we will not award the contract to the competitive bid process, and we say that you can somehow force your way into a contract that way, that is a really, really dangerous precedent to set. And I, for one, won't be in favor of it. Thank you.
I will also make a comment here. When the last meeting, when we had a chance to hear of some of the objections that the city manager just clarified, I just wanted to make sure that the process for determining who the awarded bidder would be was fair and impartial. And that's why I agree that we could take a look at it and review all those potential objections. But after that review, I also agree that I think there was a fair evaluation. Each bidder had a chance to present their best and final offer, and I believe that it was fairly evaluated. So I think in this case, we should award it to the recommended business because they did provide the best and final offer for the best interest of this vendor and this service at our lakes. So I am pretty well satisfied that we've done it properly. And again, I agree with Councilman Montoya and Councilman Gambogi that we don't want to create a precedent to have other contracts objected to based upon broad solicitation of people that would like the losing bidder to be awarded a exception. Do we have any other questions or concerns? I'll entertain a motion then at this point.
Mary, you
Mr. Mayor,
have
we have
public
public
comment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should do that, shouldn't we? I have a feeling there's quite a few of those.
There are.
All right, we'll go ahead and take public comment.
Mariah Delbeck.
Hello, my name is Mariah Dilbeck. I am the owner of Born to Be Wild Adventures. I will keep it a little bit shorter. Thank you for everything that you have said, Mayor Good and council members. As a small business owner who started Born to Be Wild Adventures 7 years ago with nothing but a few kayaks and a dream, this opportunity to be the on-site vendor is incredibly meaningful to me and to the families and visitors who have supported our growth over the years. I have led an effort to establish Prescott's Lakes as a top destination for outdoor recreation. I've created and managed signature events such as moonlight kayaking, movie nights on the lake, and a variety of seasonal marketing initiatives, all designed to attract new visitors and strengthen community engagement. Every initiative reflects my commitment to enriching the nature-based culture of Prescott and the meaningful experiences that bring people together. I very much look forward to partnering with the city. Thank you very much for your consideration. I very much just want the opportunity to deliver what I proposed to do. So thank you again. I look forward to moving forward with the city in a positive and respectful manner. Thank you for your time.
Steve Gottlieb.
I'm going to admonish the audience not to respond positively or negatively. Both people who are being considered here have a right to be equally heard. So please do not applause or boo or anything else. It's just not fair. Thank you.
Hello, City Council, Eric, staff. I want to let you know 2 years ago I lost an RFP here for the fireworks. You didn't even know that because I walked away as a gentleman, said good luck, and I went to the winner and said, if you need any help, you let me know. I'll give you anything you need. And the fireworks go on and life goes on. We have a process that's been in existence in this community forever for Epic. If there was somebody that wanted to do a mountain bike race on that weekend, or two people that have tried to work together that can't for the last 7 years. So I think you're going to create chaos and you're going to lose respect with your street contractors, your people that build things for you on the cheap because you don't have the staff. You know, they're going to say, can I question that RFP? So I only had 3 things to say to you. Man plans and God laughs. Secondly, if you have a solid RFP process, you have to respect your staff and not micromanage. You have to let them get on with what they do because you hired them for their experience. And a lot of the people that were probably in that room have decades of experience in park and recreation. And I think the last thing you have to do is you have to break it down into the facts. Was the RFP good? Yes. Is there any benefit? I don't see a benefit of going with 2 contractors. I operate events out there. I've got the lake coming up in September for a day at the lake. So my thing to you is please respect your staff. Please respect the process you have, because if you upturn it, good luck starting a new one. Thank you for your time, and God bless.
Cooper Smith.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Cooper Smith. I'm one of the team leads at Born to Be Wild. I'd just like to thank you guys for letting us come up here and speak with you, as this deeply affects our Born to Be Wild family. During the time working at Born to Be Wild, I can wholeheartedly say that I have never worked under someone that has such a passion for customer service and the quality of her product than Mariah. Whether it's her moonlight kayaking, movie nights at the lake, or just a random Tuesday in the winter when we only have a couple clients out on the water, her dedication to customer service is truly unmatched. And I speak for the entire Born to Be Wild team when I say that our dedication to customer service and the quality of the product that we are going to deliver to you guys will be the same. Born to Be Wild was selected as the final recipient for this RFP based on our outstanding customer service and the quality of the product that we deliver. I believe that not awarding this RFP to Born to Be Wild severely undermines the work that the staff of the City of Prescott have put in and the review process that is put in place for such RFPs. Thank you, guys.
Josh Haug. Amanda Ramirez.
Hello, everybody. Well, I just want to read a couple of the city codes that I find that are being violated here. And first one is, it states that no person or entity shall engage in any commercial activity within the city park system without having first obtained a concession agreement approved by the Prescott City Council or having first obtained a special events permit, which you already said it's only for one-day use. For purposes of this section, commercial activities shall include and apply to, but not be limited to, all commercial activities such as commercial tours, for which paying passengers are engaged in tours either by motorized vehicles or motorized watercraft, hot air balloons, horses, or any other means. Whatsoever in city parks and lakes, the sale or offer for sale of any goods or services for profit within the city park system, concerts, musical and theatrical or other performances, for which an admission fee or entrance fee is charged, and all other commercial activities occurring in whole or part within the city park system. A special events permit shall not be available for regularly scheduled or commercial activities or ventures, including but not limited to activities such as commercial tours, commercial boating tours, and other scheduled recurring commercial activities without an approved concession agreement having been first obtained. And, well, I also want to say that I hear what you guys are saying, that, sorry, this is very emotional for me. But yeah, I hear that the point where people, if you've had enough people having here showing support, maybe the RFP process will look at not being good. But I also want to say that Born to Be Wild breached Prescott Outdoors contract in 2018. So I ask you, are you going to allow us to breach her contract when, like she did when we had exclusivity? Thank you.
Matthew Moritz.
Good afternoon, Mayor Good, Mayor Pro Tem Cantelman, and newest member, Councilman Grady. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for your ears last time I was here. Last time I talked about transparency, and we had talked about a few other things, but unfortunately, transparency still doesn't exist because we've requested so many public records, either myself or one of our associates, and still haven't received anything. It's more than 30 days since we requested those records, and that was part of the reason for a pause last time. But I want to just go through a little bit of a timeline. So we wouldn't be here today if certain things didn't happen in a certain direction. So back in 2018, Born to Be Wild started operating at Lynx Lake Cafe, and the concessionaire there had an exclusive contract as well. He sent an email to the Forest Service saying, Born to Be Wild is not allowed to operate here. I want them removed. And they were removed from the park, from Lynx Lake. The Forest Service did their job. What happened in 2018, Born to Be Wild then immediately started operating at Watson Lake. And instead of the Parks and Rec Department, supervised by the former Parks and Rec Director, taking action and removing them, instead gave them a special letter that allowed them to operate. And so from 2018 until 2020, Born to Be Wild operated in breach of our contract. Then in 2020, as opposed to them coming up and bidding on the RFP back in 2020, they decided they didn't need to. Prescott Outdoors yet again won the contract fairly. We paid all of our commissions. We did everything right. That contract was miraculously changed. It used to be an exclusive use from 2009 until 2020. These are the facts. We could have made these evident if we got our public records. There's a lot more to this story. This shouldn't be brushed under the rug. This is a big deal. And then furthermore, after that happened, then in 2023, the former Parks and Rec Director told me that he was going to extend our contract as they had done many times in the past. He went back on his word. That's a fact. And in addition, in 2023 or 2024, this special events permit was issued. That's also a fact. And the problem with it is the special events permit is supposed to be for a one-time use, not 365, as was indicated by the city manager and the city attorney. So we have major issues here. This isn't just sour grapes. This is about a pattern, and this is about a few people acting and representing the city in a way that never should have happened. Now is the chance to make this correct. All you have to do is award 2 contracts. For the last 7 years, the precedent has been set. The city has said, yes, 2 operators can operate at the lakes, even though only 1 operator had a contract, even though 1 operator had the approval of city council members. And now we're about to backtrack on that. We're about to say the person who acted in bad faith, whether or not they had a special events permit or whether or not.
You have 30 seconds.
There's other concerns and there's other red flags. Again, I just want the public records. I think we deserve it. I don't understand why it's taken this long to get those. And there's many other issues with this, including on how the RFP was conducted. There are issues there, and eventually they'll be brought to light. So I just hope that you can understand where we're coming from here, that it's not just sour grapes and that we're just complaining because we lost. If another operator had come in and won, I could have accepted that. But with the pattern and history here, I think you could see what I'm saying. Thank you for your time.
That's all, Mayor.
Okay, we've heard public comment here, and as I said, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2025-155.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Councilwoman Furworth, you want to make a final comment?
Thank you, Mayor. In spirit of being transparent, the question about public records request, I think, is worth bringing out the response before we make a decision. Thank you.
So, as I stated in the last meeting, at that time, I did not have a public records request from you. I did have one public records request that we had not yet responded to. I had spoken to the requester several times because I was still waiting on the documents from the department. It has not been more than 30 days because our system automatically generates a 2-week due date in accordance with the law. When I knew that I was not going to have those responsive documents within that 2-week period, the law dictates that we have to respond to the requester to let them know, which I did. And then I extended the due date. The new due date, I believe, is Thursday. I'm trying to find it right now in my deep sea of public records requests. I can't remember the name of the, do you remember the name of the request?
Mr. Mayor, point of order. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
But in any event, it has not been more than 30 days. The city does not provide partial responses to records requests. I only had part of the responsive documents. So that was why I extended the due date, and we're waiting, and I'll send them out when I have everything.
I can address that. I know that the system has all the information except for one, which is the winning bid. We cannot give out a bid until a contract is awarded pursuant to state statute. So it's sitting and waiting for approval or non-approval, and then we won't be able to respond.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 5-2.
All right, we'll move on to the next item, item 11B.
Adoption of resolution number 2025-1928, setting certain citywide fees and approving a citywide fee schedule for fiscal year 25-26.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Lars Johnson, Deputy Finance Director, here to present this item to you. I'll be coordinating the presentation. If you have detailed questions about the fees, I will defer to the departments who are recommending these to you. So adopting a fee schedule citywide like we're doing is best practice for a few reasons. One is it's transparent. It's a single place for all residents and city customers, if you will, to see what fees we charge. And then it's also easy for administration, meaning there are several state laws we follow when we implement fees. This is our second year that we've done it like this, where council adopts the entire fee schedule. And during the budget process, departments are asked to evaluate what fees they're charging for certain services and then propose adjustments to an appropriate level. I'd also like to mention in our FY26 proposed budget, we have a fee study planned for, especially for community development, public works, and the fire department to evaluate are the fees appropriate at the appropriate level. Next slide, please. I don't seem to have a clicker up here.
Michael, I think it's on the podium right there, probably, if you could hand it to him.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So if the council approves the fees today, they will go into effect July 1st, which also corresponds with our next fiscal year. We've done the appropriate public notices on the fee schedule changes. The first one was a 60-day notice on March 28th. That went up on the city's webpage. And then a 15-day notice of intent is what it's called. And that goes also on the city webpage and then through social media. So that outreach has been done regarding this meeting. The fee schedule excludes certain fees that have a lengthy rate study process, such as utility rates and solid waste fees. This year, the general CPI increase is calculated to be 2.9%. We used for this the December average, U.S. consumer average CPI. And those fees, or that CPI is applied across a few different departments that utilize that in their fee resolutions, airport, community development, city clerk, and then public works. With that, I'll jump into each department. Wasn't able to list out all of the fees.
Councilmember Furworth had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Two questions for you. Could you remind us, I know I voted on this last year, when the the public rates for water and wastewater will be increased in fiscal year? When will the consumers see that increase go into effect?
Right. The next fee increase for water and wastewater is planned or scheduled to be January 1st of 26.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I wasn't positive. And regarding the impact fees that we also approved last fall, I think, when did they go into effect, and will there be any changes for fiscal year 26-27?
Thank you. So the impact fee schedule stays the same for the 5-year period. They're set for that 5 years, and then they're evaluated again when that time comes up.
And last question.
That was
you.
effective January 1st of this year.
Thank you. And the last question, can you explain the difference and the rationale in use between the May 16th workshop, where we talked about a cost of living adjustment based on Metro Phoenix CPI of 2.2, and now here we have in slide 2 a general CPI increase of 2.9 with a reference to a December average CPI-U for urban customers. I finally wrapped my mind around Metro Phoenix CPI. So what's the difference that this is higher?
That's an excellent question. Thank you. We standardized the fee schedule, what had been used up to this point, which is referenced in several city code and ordinances using the CPI US average. So that's kind of what we stuck with for the fee schedule. And again, for the market compensation proposal with the 2.2, as that also had been used for that purpose. So we're using two different measures.
Okay, so why would we use two different measures? Just because a policy says so? Is that the answer? At which point, why wouldn't we consider changing our policy?
I think over time we can start working that way. This is our second year in consolidating, and so if we were to make that change, it would impact city code and various other ordinances that we'd have to update. So I think if that's council's direction, we could work on changing that as things come up.
Well, I'm just trying to, again, get to the basis of we're paying our employees more. The average cost is 2.2 plus merit. And so I was wondering if that was the reason, plus the merit, that you were going with the CPI-U of U.S. average to try. I mean, basically in fees, we want to recover our costs. We don't want to overcharge. We don't want to undercharge. We want to just charge for the service. So I think I can't answer your question about policy because I don't know enough, but that would be something I would like to understand as we try to help all of our constituents understand, are we being fair in our costs and therefore our rates back to them?
Excellent, thank you.
Well, I'll weigh in on that as well. I think we should use the Metro Phoenix CPI. It's referenced in many other municipalities and statewide fee structures. For example, PSPRS calculates their benefits based upon a 2.7% annual increase. So if you increase above that, you're going to increase your liability. If you do below that, you'll probably reduce your liability. So I think having a consistent percentage based upon a good benchmark is something that we should adopt, and that way we can defend it more effectively throughout these rate structures. Please continue.
Thank you. So we'll take a few of the departments that have non-CPI only changes, because those were standard. I also wasn't able to list, of course, all of the fees on the slide, so if there's particular questions attached to the agenda, there's a 8-page fee schedule that you can refer to. So I'll summarize what the airport is looking to do. They're changing the methodology to create more of a tiered and price structure based on hangar size, condition. If they're upgraded or not, they get different rates. The goal is that over time, these hangars will be improved, and then the rates would be able to be updated. They're also changing the structure so that a commercial user would pay a different rate than a non-commercial user. And I'll, again, touch on the summary of this, and then you could, if you have particular questions, the airport director would be happy to answer. As I mentioned, they have planned in the budget to improve on the hangars. And they also had presented this fee schedule change to the stakeholders through the Airport Advisory Committee and the Airport Users Association, receiving positive feedback. Would there be any questions for the airport and their fees?
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been around for a year and a half, but I learn all the time. So here's my question on airport. Why would we have a 25% surcharge for commercial when, as part of our strategic plan, we're focused on commercial economic development? Would the stakeholder input referenced in this slide include commercial hangar users? Were they aligned? And then I have a more technical question after you answer those two.
I approached because I thought I might get this question. So as Laura said, we're trying to move towards a market-based methodology for pricing of hangars. The reality is if you have a commercial activity, let's say an aircraft maintainer, they would go through a competitive bid process, an RFP, and compete for a hangar space, which we've had several of those in recent months. And those will be, because of the competitive nature, higher per square foot. So the reality is we have a shortage of hangars, and we want to address the needs of our commercial operators. So we open up and these are all, by the way, all aircraft storage hangars. So they're used just for the storage of aircraft. They're not intended for maintaining aircraft, or they don't have oil water separators. They're not built to that level of utility. So we want to honor the demand for those hangars and space to house aircraft. But the reality is that a commercial operator is going to have a higher intensity. They use a little bit more power. In many cases, our fees have a nominal amount of electricity. The doors are electric in most cases. So the doors, rather than going up once every week or twice a week or maybe once a month, they're going up 4, 5, 6 times a day, just by way of example. So the intensity of use is greater. So we feel like there's a reason, rationale for putting a premium on commercial activities. And two, we didn't want to, suck up all the capacity, if you will, of hangar space by commercial operators and erode the capacity that's available for individual operators. Those individual operators may be a business, they may be an individual, but we really want to preserve as much as we can those resources for aircraft storage. So that's the rationale for having a premium for commercial activities. And two, I think that we can still justify there's still a gap between, even with a premium, what a commercial operator would pay per foot versus what a commercial operator would pay for a specialized aviation services hangar. So,
Supply and demand, economics 101. Got it. Thank you.
you bet.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Rick, could I ask you another question before you? Sorry. That's okay. I know we've studied this in the past, and just for the public's benefit, we've had a lot of old leases that were just completely not market rate. Right. So how many of those do we have left and going forward that we need to, because some of them were really long. How many do we?
Question.
Oh, okay.
We have a few. We have some long-term leases, and I think I would characterize those as kind of a maturity of the airport. There was a time where any deal was a good deal. So we have some 40 and 60, and in some cases, even with options, they go up to 80 years. Those are, finding their way through as, second and third and fourth generation. And we have had some tough decisions to make on those, as you know, but we're working through them. If you want to put a number, I would say
off the top of my head, 4 to 6, kind of legacy long-term leases that we're kind of working our way through. But the area is getting much better. That topic's getting much improved.
But we've crafted a policy now that is we can't do an 80-year lease anymore. Have we done that? Is it 5?
I don't know that we have a formal policy, but I don't think
Okay.
council has the appetite, nor would I recommend that.
Yeah.
The FAA stance is that you would have a term length appropriate to amortize the investment made. So we're really talking about ground leases, right? So a third party comes to the airport, comes to the city and says they want to build an improvement of X. And so the metric is how long does it take you to amortize that investment, with a reasonable return, right? So typically that's in the 20, 25-year range. If it's a really specialized facility, it might be 30. You might have an option of 5 years or so, but certainly not, to the length that we've seen. And again, I wouldn't demonize, past administrations or councils for doing these deals. I really think it's a maturity issue that, that many communities go through. And I would point out on this topic that came regarding the rates and fees, on all those that we would go through a competitive RFP process. What we're really talking about today is really month-to-month aircraft storage hangars. So I want to kind of separate those two topics, which are not susceptible to the same plague of long-term leases. These are really month-to-month. If it's a violation, then either party can terminate with 30 days notice.
And did I read in here, I was just trying to find it real quick, that we are going to be offering eventually in the future, looking towards economic development, something that's become very popular in that set, are these more along the lines of the luxury hangars? Are we going to have a few
The
of
FAA
those?
may be listening, so let's talk about upscale, right?
Yeah, okay, upscale, yeah.
Absolutely.
Is the plan to do 4 of those, or what was the plan? 4?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We have, we'll be bringing to council next month, designed for 4 hangars, 4 larger hangars, 65 by 62 for 2 of them, and 55 by 62 for the other 2.
And there'll be more.
We're getting a little off topic here.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Come on back up. One more question. So many of the other departments did things that were based on personnel rates given the CPI increase. And so one thing I was noticing, you had on page 269 of the package of all the detailed rates, you had an operational fees airport personnel rate per hour. You recommended it staying flat. Why wouldn't your department also increase with CPI like the other ones did?
Well, that's the comment you made earlier about we want to recover the cost of the city, but not be punitive, right? So we went back and took a look at that through the budget process. And when we looked at the highest paid operations technician or maintainer that would do that work, it was about half of our book rate of $68, I believe, per hour. So
you averaged it out where you thought it was fair and left it?
We thought it was fair. I wouldn't propose that we reduce it, but I really couldn't come up with justification for increasing it either.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Thank you. We'll move to library, which is the next department with some non-CPI changes. Really, what here is room rentals for the library are increasing, or proposed to be increased, based on upgrades that have happened in those rooms to recoup some of that. So the numbers here on the slide, 15 to 30, means that currently is $15 for that, and it's moving to 30. So, for example, the first one, the 1 to 2 hour block is proposed to be $30 instead of $15. And again, if you have any questions on these, library director could answer those.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you. I just had one quick question. Are all rooms subject to a fee for rental at the library, or are some of them not?
Thank you for the question. These are just the main rooms for commercial use. So anyone that is requesting to use the rooms for their business are the ones that are using these particular rooms. We still continue to offer rooms to the public and to our nonprofit and our partners for no charge.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to recreation services. This department also has several changes
because of our second year doing the citywide process, they've gone back and looked, and these fees hadn't been changed for a very long time. I think the parking fee was last changed in 2015. Yes, FY15. Went up from, at that time, it went from $2 to $3. And so now this year, the proposal is going from $3 to $5. This is the fee you pay when you go to the metered parking lots on city parks, which is the lakes and then I think a couple of the trailheads. And then, as you can see, there's also remodel and grass area rental fees for all of the lakes, and then I think one park, Heritage, are also being proposed to be increased.
So how do you justify over a 60% increase in parking fee?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. We have proposed the increase on the parking fee to be at the same level as the Prescott National Forests, which is currently $5. Increasing it from $3 to $5 also allows us to do upgrades to our kiosk machines where not everybody has $5 in change. It removes that coin receptor for people to put in $3 worth of quarters or coins and make it available to do a tap with a card. But we don't have the room or the capacity on machines to have a coin receptor and a tap machine capability. And so that's why we're proposing the $5 increase, or the $2 increase from $3 to $5. And based on the visitation and the monies that we've received over the last 2 years, based on the average attendance or visitation to the parks, it would increase our general fund revenue over $100,000.
Well, we shouldn't be planning on making a profit here.
They are highly visited parks. And we also feel that the increase to having the flat $5 instead of the $3 will do better with people bypassing and not even paying because they'll have that tap
That's a separate issue.
capability.
I mean, if you're a National Parks senior, you can get a all parks pass, or you can go anywhere for free. Are we going to have one of those?
So jumping
Probably
in here,
not.
Jumping in here. So we do have passes for the parks for parking. One allows, I believe it's 10 visits,
Right.
and one's an annual.
So we do have visits that you can purchase. This is for just the daily use that you don't buy a pass. Right now we have a $10, 10 visits for $20, 40 visits for $60, and $100 gives you unlimited all for 1 year from the date of purchase. And that's good at Watson, Willow, Goldwater Lake. It's also good at the Peavine Trail at Sundog Ranch Road and also the Constellation Trail.
Well, I, for one, think that's rather steep. I mean, going from 3 to 4 probably makes a lot more sense. But that's micromanagement. So that's my opinion. Please proceed.
Perfect. Ned also mentioned that the fees we collect for the parking it's an offset to what it costs to run the parks. It doesn't cover 100%. We through setting the fees, we don't create profit. We seek to cover some of the costs that the services are to provide. One more slide on recreation services, and that's field usage fees and special event fees. They're listed there to what the changes are. Any questions on those? All right, moving on to fire department. This is also an area that hadn't been addressed in several years. And that's what we're looking at changing going forward, is to not have these large increases, instead of have incremental changes. And what the fees are that they collect are plan review and inspections and permits. So These are people that are submitting plans to the city that are required to be reviewed by the fire department, and then to offset the cost of that review and inspection, a fee is charged. The proposal is that we would do a catch-up CPI increase. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a complete fee study being proposed that would study this in more depth.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so there's been a couple of departments, this one standing out the most, so I decided to ask this question here with fire. How can we go, when we're supposed to be cost recovering, how can we go 10 years without raising fees? And what is it about our policy, citywide policy, that allows this to happen? And what do we have to do to change our policy? Is that a council decision, or is that a finance or a city manager decision that we would, if there's a CPI increase and it's affecting every department must get this done in time for the annual budget? So I think so highly of you, Holger, and to see 10 years, that's even longer than you've been here. I'm kind of shocked.
Well, thank you. First of all, that last bullet that you have there is kind of the punchline to what you're asking, which is that's one of the reasons why we're recommending Public Works, Community Development, and Fire conduct a comprehensive recovery fee study to recommend some of those policy changes for your consideration overall. Now, in terms of why has fire not increased over the last 10 years, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, and I'll keep it brief, in the 08 recession, there were a lot of positions that were attrition in the city, and one of those areas in the fire department was community risk management. As you recall, Chief Valdez was just recently hired as the first time that we had a full-time fire marshal, and those strategies related to community risk management and fee schedules is his responsibility. We didn't have one of those. We now have one of those, and he did a fantastic job, as you can see in your materials, coming up with this proposal. As Lars also mentioned, we have over the last 2 years made a diligent effort to get back into a much more proactive way of doing the cost recovery that you referred to. Last year, we ran out of time due to staff bandwidth. There were a lot of other things that were on the priority plate, and we just didn't quite make that deadline. We do recommend, and this is a very modest CPI escalator, it's not really compounding. We really wanted to make sure that we were solid on this to get us to 2026 for this fee study, so it's not as even stark of a contrast at that point. One key piece of this is we have gotten support from our industry collaborators, such as YCCA, around this CPI increase, because they do recognize that we have been very, very far behind, especially with our closest comparison, which is CAFMA. Even with what we're doing here, some of our cost recovery at that point will still be below. We're looking for that comprehensive fee study in fiscal year 26 to get us really, tied in, and then, to your point, to have those escalators built in on a permanent basis.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Department with a fee request is the police department, and that's one fee they're looking to change is create a video one-time fee, $46 per video hour reviewed. So this has become important with the increasing coverage with body cams and the time it takes to review and redact and so forth. So this is their proposal. Any further questions? That was all I had on the presentation.
Have any public comment on these?
We do not, Mayor.
Surprising. Other concerns from the council? So I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve or adopt resolution number 2025-1928.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll move to items, what are we, 11C.
Adoption of ordinance number 2025-1897, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Prescott, Yavapai County, Arizona, authorizing the purchase of approximately 37.32 acres of real property from James D. Will Ranches No. 1 LLC near the Prescott Regional Airport, Ernest A. Love Field.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem, members of City Council. For the record, I'm Rick Kreider. I serve as your airport director. And the slide you have in front of you is really the subject of the resolution that was just read. It is encompassed by Highway 89. You see the tail end of the runway, our primary commercial service runway, runway 3 right, 21 left, on the top right of the screen. The parcel being considered today is between Highway 89, James Lane on the south, and Wool Creek Road on the western side. So, see if I make the clicker work here. There we go. Like that? A little sizzle. So just for context, I wanted to kind of go back and talk about how this parcel plays into a broader conversation. This council, of course, has seen this. We've had a multi-year discussion about OEI splay, or one-engine inoperative splay. The wisdom or the thought of purchasing, I think up to 8 parcels have been considered over time that fall within that splay. And you see that these cities not just contemplated, but also recognize the fact that the splay is, in some cases, within 10 feet of the topographic surface itself, the terrain itself. So OEI splay goes back, and it's relative to commercial activity, multi-engine commercial aircraft. So, and it has to do with if one engine is lost, that aircraft's ability to climb away from the airport and climb away from rising terrain. So we all know that the winds in Prescott are typically out of the southwest. Our takeoffs and landings are to and from the southwest. So this is kind of a critical piece. As I arrived a few months after, I kind of acknowledged in the conversations that while acquiring the property would improve the potential penetration of the OEI splay, it doesn't really account for the fact that there are 40-foot power poles where that red dot is. They go essentially north-south along the property line, nor does it really account for the fact that we have some housing within the Pinion Oaks subdivision that likely penetrate already. So went back and with the consensus of city leadership and council, went back and took a look of what if you were to shift the runway, because there's also an active conversation about extending the runway to the northeast. So the thought process was, as opposed to buying the property in the southwest, why not shift the runway by about 1,000 feet at the same time that we do the runway extension. And preliminary results are good. It looks like, and I'll show you the impact on the splay itself, but it also has some goodness in the fact that it mitigates some exposure within the runway protection zone, that kind of funny looking trapezoid box on the left side. So as it shifts to the right, it also takes, there's actually a hotel and there's a gas station and some housing that moves out of that RPZ. It also opens the door for additional efficiencies with taxiing aircraft, and obviously it shifts the noise to the northeast. So we feel like there's some goodness in that. I won't talk a lot about the shift because we're going to have a comprehensive public workshop. We've got 2 open houses scheduled for June 25th and 26th, and we're on the schedule to come back to City Council in a study session and talk about the results on September 23rd. So won't talk a lot about the shift, but want to kind of put that in because when you talk about one parcel, it's part of a bigger, more complex, multi-year discussion, and I just want to kind of set some context for you. So cutting to the chase, when we modeled, the shift of the runway, it mitigates a great part of the splay, the OEI splay. It goes from about 10 feet to about 70 feet, in some cases 90 feet. So it improves, the potential for a structure to penetrate the imaginary splay or surface, if you will, but for the little circled area up close to Highway 89. So this is the 37-acre tract that we're talking about today. And I guess the simple message here is that parcel is really comes into play whether we shift the runway or not. So I wanted to leave you with that, just that point.
Okay, Rick, we have several questions
Yes,
here
please.
from the council. Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, I just have a quick question that's never come to my mind before, but every time we've talked about the OEI, the one engine inoperable, and they show a representation of the display always goes out to the right. My question is, if a plane has one engine that becomes inoperable, does it matter if it's the engine on the right side of the plane or the left side of the plane? Would it always go to the right, or would the failure of an engine cause it to maybe go to the left? That's just an operational question.
Yeah, so the presumption is the aircraft would maintain longitudinal control, right? So it could go left or right with one engine regardless. Correct.
Regardless of what side the engine failed on.
Correct.
Okay.
I will note that can I go back to the previous slide here? It does go to the right because of terrain. So that's the natural direction of the flight. Has a lot to do with normal operations going to either Los Angeles or Denver predominantly, but it has mostly to do with the terrain and the natural course of the aircraft.
Yeah, I guess my question was not so much the train, was the plane operation. Does the plane have to turn right, or could it turn left if it had to? Okay.
Good question. Thank you.
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, my question, and I'm not sure if I'm tracking, so I'm just trying to make sure I am. So are you building in the shift in the runway into the purchase of the land we're talking about today? Or are you, I guess, what is this purchase still make sense if we don't shift the runway? And maybe I just wasn't tracking and following closely enough, but I guess I kind of don't understand that.
Correct. I just want to make sure council understood that the acquisition of this property is important whether we shift the runway or not. So this graphic shows the improved OEI splay, but the fact that we still have within 10 feet in some areas a penetration of the splay. So, for example, and what does that mean? So that means that left to market demands, building even a light pole could be significant, or certainly any kind of structure. So the justification is there whether the runway shifts or not, and that's really what I'm trying to say.
So, but just to clarify, to drill down a bit more, if we do shift the runway, does it make it so, does this make it unnecessary to shift the runway? Should we still shift the runway? Like, do we get a benefit from shifting the runway?
I believe so. And again, we'll vet this out with the planning process, but initial results are that there's great benefit to shifting because we save about $14 million worth of land acquisition.
So we are, in this purchase, we're contemplating already shifting that runway then?
Well, I didn't presume that we're going to shift or not shift. My point is simply that that this is clearly an area, a parcel to acquire with the existing OEI splay. Even with the shift, though, still a valid acquisition because you have the close proximity to the display and the topography.
You said saving $14 million in land acquisition, though. I'm just curious, is that just from narrowing the scope of what we're purchasing, or I'm just curious because again, if we can buy less land by shifting the runway, given that the long-term planning around the airport is to extend the runway and harden it, additionally for future commercial air service expansion, my thinking would be that obviously if we would plan into this purchase, we don't know when that extension is going to happen, but shifting runway makes sense to me. I imagine it makes sense to most of the people up here. So I'm just curious is there additional savings we could get by programming in the shifting at this point?
Well, I guess my point is that of the 8 parcels that were considered by council over the last few years, let's say, the 7 that if the shift, and I'm kind of playing forward, if the shift does pan out, there is community acceptance, council does approve that direction to shift as opposed to acquire land, we could avoid buying 7 of the 8 parcels. In today's dollars, we think that's about $14 million. So that's where my number, again, a little bit of the back of the napkin interpolation, but that's where the $14 million came from.
So stated another way, if we don't shift the runway, you're suggesting that you may be back here in the future asking for us to purchase what today would cost $14 million in additional land acquisition. Is that right?
That's correct. Plus, I think what's not been reconciled in that land acquisition number is putting the power poles underground or possible penetrations within the subdivision.
Thank you.
You bet.
Councilman Gambogi.
The current runway is how long?
7616, 7,616 feet.
7616.
16.
We've talked about extending the runway. We wanted to extend it to what?
10,000.
So if you put in the shift, does it change the amount of extension?
It changes the amount of runway you will build. So we'll build to solve for the 10,000 foot runway without a shift. We would build, and my math is on the fly is a bit rough, but so
2,400. Yeah.
2,400 feet. So with the shift, you would build 3,400 feet.
Gotcha.
And then you would tear up the 1,000 feet on the south end. And the reason that's important is that the OEI splay is dictated by the departure end of the runway. Again, we have southern flow, so most of the takeoffs departures are to the southwest. So until you move that usable pavement to the northeast, you don't move the splay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Rick, I'm on record last summer saying I'm not a fan of buying land west of the airport. But I understand, I read the paper, I recall 2 accidents in the last few years that happened in this piece of land. What's the history on this piece of land, why it's, from a safety standpoint, a good thing to invest in buying?
Yes, ma'am. Well, you read my mind because that's somewhat the topic, not completely the topic of the next slide, but this slide shows in recent years, 3 years and 5 days. I think the oldest goes back to 2022. We've had 3 off-airport landings. Thankfully, there were some minor injuries. There were no fatalities, but they illustrate what, well, let me go back and say that when you talk about OEI splay, that really speaks again to multi-engine commercial aircraft. The equivalent in single-engine training aircraft is extended and protected center line of the runway, right? So as pilots are trained, we learn that when you lose power, especially in a single-engine airplane, you maintain airspeed, and any turn will erode lift, and therefore how far you can glide. So it removes the options. So as you see, you've got the 3 incidents that have happened in the just over 3 years have been along that extended center line of the runway. To answer your question more comprehensively, though, we've had 27 total incidents in the last 10 years. We spoke over the weekend, and you asked that. That includes ground loops by tail draggers. That includes crosswinds that blew an aircraft off the taxiway. So there are only 4 off-airport incidents. 3 on the south end because, again, the predominance. The 4th was a bit further out. It happened in Prescott Valley. It was a catastrophic engine failure and a fire that resulted in an off-airport landing. Again, no fatalities. But all of these illustrate, again, the wisdom of a protected center line. So a lot of energy and a lot of discussion's gone into OEI splay, which is absolutely a valid metric. The reality is that the vast majority of our operations at Prescott Regional Airport are single-engine training aircraft. The training means they do a lot of pattern work, so they'll take off and enter downwind and come back and land. And the fact that single engine is just what I said, that the option is to land essentially straight ahead. So we just want to illustrate that. But 27 total, 4 off airport would be the answer to your question. Mayor? Okay. Digging a bit deeper, this is the most recent one, January 18th of this year. And I wanted to kind of drill into this a little bit. I don't have the impact points and the final resting place in all 3 incidents. This one I do because I was here and took pictures and was able to kind of data mine that information. But you'll see the center part of the property we're considering today is where the aircraft touched down, slowed down with trees, came to rest just short of Highway 89. You can see here the alignment, going back to my point about that protection of the extended center line of the runway. You see the proximity. Again, thankfully no one was hurt. Everybody walked away because we had that protection, that runway protection that's been so talked about in the last few years. But if you had obstructions, I think the importance of that is that if you had even light uses like light poles or risers for sporting events, that could impact the safety of these aircraft. And we know that, again, that single engine training aircraft is so predominant here at Prescott Regional Airport. So going back to, again, a lot of context, and it sounds like that was useful because there's some great questions that came from the context. But I want to kind of highlight, we do have a willing seller on this parcel of land, 37.32 acres. This also shows the remaining segment of that parcel between Highway 89, James Lane, and Willow Creek Road. That's the Canyon Bible Church. You may also recall that the city a few years back purchased an easement on the that southeastern portion of the tract, which means they impacts what they can build. We do have a willing seller. We went through the FAA approved appraisal process. The amount is in the bid is in your resolution package, $3.176 million, $200. We've gone through the process. We anticipate a grant. We have a tracking number from the FAA for a $1.1 million grant we expect this summer that will help solve the problem or reimbursement. The balance will go back to ADOT and ask for the balance. I didn't put a lot of specificity. Mark and I talked several times about what level of specificity you put into this, and I'm always cautious about saying we will get this until you have a grant offer in hand and money in the bank. I really hesitate to say we can rely on this. I do have high confidence in both the grant coming this summer and ADOT's participation. But what I would suggest to council as you consider this topic is that we look at more comprehensive solution. We look at the land acquisition, look at the appraisal costs, the siting studies, the shift study, the easement that was purchased that enhances that acquisition. Look at that. My recommendation is we look at that more comprehensively. We have a meeting with ADOT on Friday. We're going to kind of pitch this idea based on what feedback and decision is made today. And what I would suggest is we look at resolving this again comprehensively and maximizing the state impact, because it is a big impact. It's very important. They've recognized that. Maximize the state funding that can come back. So that's my rationale for not putting an exact dollar figure in your memo or your resolution. In a perfect
Mayor Pro Tem can't tell me you had a question.
It's probably more of a statement than a question, but we've been talking about this, as Rick indicated, for several years and been dealing with this. And, nobody wants to spend money we don't have to spend. But this, to me, is crucial. And back when this whole issue first came up a few years ago, I went onto the NTSB website. And at that time, since 1964, there's been 168 crashes out of that, not including those 23, by the way. So out of that airport, it doesn't tell me or indicate exactly where they all were, but nonetheless, this is, to me, a crucial acquisition. We just have to do it. We do it to protect the neighborhoods. If there hasn't been any casualties in neighborhoods because we haven't had neighborhoods, but if they go in those areas that we are spending the money on, it'll be a whole different story. So I do support all of this around that airport. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you. Well, and Mayor, I conclude kind of that was a great primer because I try and give an objective, pros and cons of all this. But I will say that this, just exactly what you say, this is really an investment in the future. It affects the viability of the airport going forward. And the viability of the airport going forward impacts the economic catalyst that we all want to see the airport be. So again, I'm not trying to make a sales pitch here, but I think it's important to note that protection of the runway and the potential in the future it has is really important, and things typically don't get cheaper.
Any other questions or concern? Do we have any public comment on this?
We do not.
In that case, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 2025-1897.
Second.
Very well. We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, we'll move on to item 11D.
Approval of city contract number 2025-156 for the Archaeological Phase 2 data recovery investigations for the Willow Creek Gravity Sewer Project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Sherwood, Public Works Capital Program Manager.
Item I have for you today is a contract for archaeological data recovery for the Willow Creek Gravity Sewer Project. The new sewer main will cross 3 previously identified archaeological sites as indicated on the map, just on that curve of Willow Creek Road or Willow Lake Road. The entirety of the project pretty much runs east to west across Willow Lake Road down to just below near the lower right-hand corner of the map. This site is subject to compliance with the Arizona Antiquities Act and the City of Prescott Historic Preservation Code. Phase 1 archaeological investigation was awarded to Logan Simpson by council July 9th of last year and was completed in February 2025. You may remember there was a large area that was fenced off along Willow Lake Road. We got a lot of feedback from that from trail users and stuff like that. That's the activity that was going on at that time. An historic properties treatment plan, or an HPTP, was developed for those 3 sites, and that is a requirement of the Arizona Antiquities Act as well as the Historic Preservation Code. During Phase 1 investigations, significant prehistoric items were located. The consulting parties for the project, which are the Arizona State Museum and the Hopi Tribal Historic Preservation Office, have determined that this site requires a Phase 2 investigation, which is much more in depth than a Phase 1. Phase 1 is more exploratory. Phase 2 really gets down into the weeds once they realize there's something there. So Public Works is recommending award of a contract to Logan Simpson in the amount of $748,110. Funding for the project is budgeted in FY25 and available in the Wastewater Fund. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Was that contract competitively bid?
No, sir. This was they're on our on-call services. They're pre-selected on our on-call services contract, and they also did Phase 1. We did look at a couple other, when we started Phase 1, we looked at a couple other options. The complexity of this project kind of eliminates some of the smaller firms that do this type of work.
And I believe that's mandatory that be investigated because of the cultural and archaeological significance, correct?
Yes, sir. We have several sites like that around the city.
Well, I know they got those pit houses that are not that far away, over on the other side of Willow Lake.
Yeah, in your packet there was a table that kind of indicated what they anticipate to find in their Phase 2 study.
Well, it's kind of painful to see that amount of money involved, but it's necessary.
Yes, sir. It's going to take them about 6 or 8 weeks, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a lot of handwork. There are some machines that they use, but when something's discovered, it's a lot of handwork, similar to what you might see in a documentary about archaeology. They start going in with a lot of hand tools to identify whatever's there.
Council have any other questions or concerns? Councilman Moore?
Tim, on the Phase 2, depending what they additionally find, could it potentially cause you to reroute the route of this project, or
no?
This
once they're done with this, they'll be satisfied to the point that we can go ahead and put our line where it's going to go.
Okay. And
being that it's a gravity sewer main, it kind of needs to.
Yeah. And so once they're done, how quickly can your work start?
We're hopeful. This process, like I said, they're going to take about 8 weeks. It'll probably take about another 4 to 6 months to get the reports done, as well as anything that's found be taken off site. The idea is when this is done, they repatriate everything back to where they found it. So it will probably delay us into spring, maybe this time next year, before we actually get to start construction.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Tim, once you complete this Phase 2 archaeological expense and work, will we be able to proceed then with the full gravity feed project, or given the location, are we apt to run into more of these kinds of archaeological concerns?
No, like I said, this area has been clearly identified, and once they go through and take care of the work that they need to do, we'll be able to move forward with our project.
Do you have any public comment on this?
We do not, Mayor.
Then I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve City Contract 2025-156.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Very well. We'll move on to item 11E.
Approval of city contract number 2025-159 for the Miller Valley Road and Grove Avenue Sidewalk Improvements Project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Tim Sherwood again. This project is for design. This is a contract for design services, which includes sidewalk and sidewalk ramp improvements at roadway and driveway crossings along Miller Valley Road and Grove Avenue, as indicated on the map. The primary scope of work is to remove and replace sidewalk ramps that are not accessible with mobility devices and are not ADA compliant. City received comments a short time ago from some residents who use mobility devices and travel along this corridor, and there are multiple sidewalk ramps that are just impassable with a mobility device. Staff reviewed the corridor and confirmed there are many locations where using a mobility device might be unsafe or difficult. Staff also found many sidewalk ramps at street intersections and driveways that are not ADA compliant. And it is anticipated that many temporary construction easements and permanent sidewalk easements and/or acquisition of additional right-of-way may be required for this project. The construction of the project will likely be completed in phases due to the expansive scope, impacts on pedestrian activity, as well as businesses. The project will support city strategic goals for highly rated services and well-maintained streets. We are recommending award of contract to Burgess and Nyepel for $498,420.14, and funding for the project is budgeted in FY25 and available in the Streets Fund. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilman Gambogi.
Tim, we're talking about spending almost $500,000 for sidewalk and sidewalk alone.
It's sidewalks, it's new driveway approaches, it's new ADA ramps. There's so much of this corridor that's not compliant as far as ADA goes. There's sidewalk that goes to a certain point, discontinues, it drops down into the street. And it's a long corridor. We're talking all the way from Whipple all the way down to Gurley Street.
So how long is that?
Pretty close to 2 miles, yes, sir.
Wow.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Yeah, for a lot of us that live on that side of the town and travel that road every single day, it scares me to see all the veterans in their wheelchairs dashing into the streets for sections because they can't stay on the sidewalks. And considering how fast people are going, part of the reason we didn't raise the speed limit in that area, I think this is important for us to do and get this fixed correctly.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a inexpensive project. It's quite expensive. But in order to be able to make it safe for the people that do use those little motorized wheelchairs and things like that, you have to look at it sometimes from a liability perspective. I mean, all it would take is somebody not paying attention or communicating on their cell phone or something else, and boy, before you know it, somebody's been hit, and we're going to be dealing with a tort attorney. No offense, Joe, but tort attorneys, not my favorite kind of people. Do I have any public comment on this?
We do not, Mayor.
I'll entertain a motion then.
Mayor, move to approve City Contract 2025-159.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, now we're moving on to item 11F.
Approval of city contract number 2025-163 with Epic Rides for sponsorship of the Whiskey Off-Road event.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Excited to be able to share this with you, and I assume those who left are here, or those who are left are here for this item, or they're going to be disappointed because it's the last one. Talking about a few things today related to the Whiskey Off-Road First of all, just a few thoughts about the event, some of the concerns the city's been trying to figure out, a little bit on the revenue benefit side, and then the agreement that is proposed here today. So starting with the event itself, and all of this was presented very well 2 weeks ago in a study session at council, and it appears a little bit smaller on this screen than on a desktop when you're sitting at your desk, but there's a lot of good information here and a lot of good things that come out of this event. It's an awesome event. It's our third largest event. It's a lot of fun. This is my first year here, but I was able to go this year and it was fantastic. It was a blast. It's, as the third largest event, it's also a pillar in our city brand. And I want to just touch on that quickly because a lot of people understand the idea that corporations have a profit motive and everything they do is targeted at driving that profit motive. For a city, for a government entity, local government entity, we don't have a profit motive per se, but we have a brand motive. And that is everything we do is targeted at, I love to live here. I love doing business here. I love going to Prescott. It's such a cool place, right? And whiskey helps us do that. They're a pillar in that brand as Prescott is a cool place to go outside and have some fun. I have a lot of people who come and visit us for that reason. There's quite a bit more on this slide that was presented a couple weeks ago, but very cool event, something we hope is here for a very long time. The other part of this sort of train of thought is, okay, so we want it to be here for a long time. It's a really cool thing. How do we design it or build it so that it can be sustainable over that period? So this graph, and again, I apologize that some of the text is smaller than I thought it might be, but this is the total cost to the city over time. So you can see in 2004, 2005, the agreement, those are 1-year contracts between the city and Epic Rides, $1,750 specifically for advertising, and an agreement to do some security and traffic control with a not to exceed of $5,000. That's where we started. And 1-year agreements, there's a gap there. 2006 to 2009, I can't find any data, or 2011. But you can see sort of the trend line, and I'll note at the same time, 2020, 2021, there were events. Those were our COVID years, right? But you can see the trend line. And going back as early as 2012, I've found documents showing that the city was starting to be concerned about the cost relative to the event. So in 2004, there were 200 participants. By 2013, there were just under 1,800 participants. And by a couple years later, about 2015 or so, they hit 2,000 participants, which is the Forest Service maximum number for the event. And over time, you see just the cost increasing, right? Part of there's different concerns. In 2012, Councilmember Jim Lamerson talked about, what is the intent of this money? Is this startup money? Is this ongoing money? Is this advertising money? Is this operational money? Like, what's the relationship? And as far as I can tell, there were some questions just sort of festering over time, at least since then. We haven't necessarily answered that question. But the costs have gone up, and post-COVID, like everything else, those costs have really jumped. Part of that is to do with the city's contract with Epic Rides in 2019, which expanded the contract, especially the scope of the in-kind services. So to give you an idea, in 2014, the contract was $20,000 for expenses, $10,000 in prize money, but then Epic Rides had to pay the city back $10,000 for the services that it used, right? That cap comes off, the cap on the at-kind or in-kind comes off about 10 years ago. and we start providing the services in kind, right? And since that time, you see that the dollars go up. The 2019 agreement also included hotel rooms, a storage facility, a shipping facility, a number of other services that are beyond what the scope of what the city does. And we've seen that cost go up. So that's just one of the things that we're thinking about in terms of how do we make this a great event forever. The answer has to be, how do we make it sustainable, right? How do we find a way to continue to cover the costs that are given to the city? Another question here that comes up a lot is the equality sort of question, where Epic Rides currently gets something close to 100% of any revenue that it generates for the city. We don't give that deal to anybody else. The rodeo doesn't get that deal. Christmas City doesn't get that deal. Nobody gets that deal. And so there's, again, a question of what's the win for the city? There's a very clear win, I think, for the whole community. But for the city, where's the win? It looks like we're probably giving more than we get. And so let's look at where the balance is here. Now let's talk about the other side. That's the cost side. Let's talk about the revenue side a second. And I think one of the most salient points on that is we're not entirely sure. We're not entirely sure on the revenue side. So we are using studies and estimates to try to get concrete information about the revenue from the event. And two studies worth noting. One in 2013, Arizona State helped us with a study, and they looked at the year-round impact of the event. And we heard about that a lot a couple weeks ago, right? People come up a few weeks early to try the course. People come back a few weeks later because it was awesome. People come, throughout the year because they just, whiskey inspires them to come to Prescott and go mountain biking. And that's awesome. ASU looked at all of that. At the time in 2013, there were just under 1,800 participants. And that study said there was about a $4.5 million total impact to the Tri-City area. But that study was not comprehensive, and that it was not appropriate to jump from there to how much taxes are generated. So it's a large area, it's a long period of time, but we don't know exactly. We can try to do some back of the napkin math and guess a little bit, but we don't know exactly what of that is physical dollars and what of that is like economic dollars, right? So then in 2024, Applied Economics was hired to do a study. Their study was a little bit different. They looked just at the days of the event. Obviously in 2024, we'd hit that 2,000 participant Forest Service max. And they found that in the days of the event, in the boundaries of the city of Prescott, a total impact of $2.8 million, which comes out to just about $42,000 in city taxes. Now, what's the right number? And I think the answer is they're both wrong, right? Neither one of them tells us exactly what is the total impact in tax dollars to the city. We can guess, we can extrapolate, we can think about, well, what does inflation look like? Or but at the end of the day, we don't really know in a way that we can be really confident about what is the impact. Now, we understand we're doing things by studies, which means anything we get is going to be an estimate, but we don't know how close our estimates are or aren't. So part of what we talked about 2 weeks ago is the idea of, it's important that we answer this question about the data before we talk about what does the long term look like. And so part of what I'll share in just a second is the idea that Epic Rides and the city could study this together. I imagine we'd probably go back to ASU actually, because they do this all the time for events, right? They estimate the impact of the Super Bowl and others, the golf events that come into Scottsdale. And so they're comfortable with this kind of study. But let's look at it together and let's try to answer this question as definitively as we can about what is the revenue look like? What is the impact to the city in a way that helps us to put the cost that we see, we see those escalating costs, but let's put them into context and let's understand what they're really telling us. Which leads me to the proposal for a new agreement. So speaking with Epic Rides, we've agreed that a 2-year agreement would be appropriate. It would give us time to do the study that we're talking about and to start to negotiate and hopefully conclude negotiations on what happens beyond that period. Let me see if I can pick out a few highlights here. So the biggest part of this agreement is let's continue to have the event, right? That's goal number one. Again, goal number two, branding is such a big deal for cities. Everything we do should be about our brand motive, and whiskey is a big part of that. We want to continue that. There's some other provisions here, but the cost that we've agreed to is $70,000 per year. Now, in the slides I showed you before, and in this last year, that dollar was $60,000. So this is $10,000 more in cash than we've provided in previous years. But then in-kind services limited to the services the city provides. So the venue, security and traffic control, sanitation, permit fee waivers, city liaison. We think those are in the ballpark in-kind value of about $40,000, could be $45,000. But it's right in there. So, and then not providing some of the other things that we don't normally do as a city. We don't provide hotel rooms. We don't do facilities for shipping or storage or those kinds of things. That's not what we're good at. So it ends up being a little bit of a reduction from the last couple of years, but still a substantial sponsorship, a show of our support, a desire to both be fiscally responsible, which we heard about 2 weeks ago, and to be wildly supportive and provide time for us to understand more and think about the future. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Councilman Gambogi.
Whoever does the marketing for Whiskey Off-Road, I want to congratulate them. As of this meeting, I've counted 233 emails in favor. And I made 2 observations from that. In my time on city council, when we have proposals, we get some in favor and some against. But this one is 233, so the score in the fourth quarter is 233-0. Secondly, I think we have the best city manager on the planet Earth. But I have to take issue with him. Earlier he said, well, we're not a corporation, we don't need to make money. And we do need to do this study and get some understanding of the numbers so that we on council feel good about making a decision and the residents feel good that we made the right decision. Because if you pursue one set of numbers, we're losing about $92,000 a year on this event. So I salute the program or your proposal, and I'm in full support.
Councilman Grady.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I'm in full support as well, but I do have a couple of questions. So the first question, Dallin, is, so have we considered how we might raise other funding, other public grant opportunities for events like this?
That's a great question. A lot of that falls to the events as the event organizers, right? To look at where could there be other sponsors, right? Could we have Waste Management come and do the trash like they do for other events? And that then cuts back on what the city has to do. That's an ongoing conversation with a lot of our events. And something that I would say more broadly, we could do some thinking and policy making around. So we're talking about it. I don't have a solid, this is what we're going to do.
I mean, it might be an interesting opportunity for an organization like PIMBA to be a co-sponsor along with us, and they would be eligible for funding and be a cool project to fund. My other question is a larger one that probably doesn't have an answer today, but just a concern about the number of events that we financially participate in and comparing those events one to the other. So are we looking at it with the same return on investment model that was talked about last week and talked about today? And I think that's something I would be hopeful that, perhaps city management can provide in the near future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we've got a first draft of a special events policy to try to, again, the goal of that is to get to a place where we can treat each event the same or approach them all the same. And I think one of the things that we would contemplate in terms of long-term support of an event is, are we supporting costs or are we sponsors? If we're sponsors, then we should pay a dollar amount for that sponsorship and then get marketing in return. That's a different relationship than the idea of we're paying all the costs and then the community is getting a great return, but we're worried about the dollars and we're worried about financial transparency. And one of the questions we've had with this event specifically is not just the return on investment, but the financial transparency where it's the only event that won't provide financial statements, and it's a for-profit company. And so that makes us a little bit nervous as a local government. So how do we responsibly address that in a way that we can continue to support the event and not be worried about gift clause or those kinds of things?
Councilman Montoya.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to say that I'm appreciative of the city manager for having sought a solution that gets us to where we are today. I think it's a good way to move forward. I think it's hard to look at an event like this and quantify it in a lot of ways. So I'm anxious that to have both Epic Rides and the city of Prescott having a concrete, or as concrete as you can get in these kind of analysis, understanding of the impact to this event. Because my sense looking at the two numbers that you provided earlier in your presentation is that they're both undershooting the impact. And I think what I've heard in those 233 emails is that there's another impact that we're not quantifying when we look at some of the economic impact, which is the impact it has on our community, which is significant. And so I appreciate everyone who's here in their whiskey off-road gear and their biking gear, because I think what I've heard overwhelmingly is that this event means a lot to folks. And so I think it's important that we're sensitive to that too. I will say that I'm excited about moving forward and having that better understanding, and also the idea of having a more concrete policy as you outlined, because I think the paradigm shift of a sponsorship versus just handing someone money makes a lot of sense to me. Because then the ROI is kind of like, you can say, well, we're supporting this event and we're sponsoring it because it really speaks to the brand of Prescott. And I think that's what this event does in a very big way. And I would like just one piece of suggestion I would say on that special event policy that I would say is that I think we can fairly establish that there are 3 marquee events that happen in Prescott. And this is one of them, clearly. But the other 2 are the courthouse, events that happen around Christmas time and the rodeo. And so I think when we enter into kind of adopting a special event policy, I would ask us to look to put a different lens on those specific events because they are integral to our brand. Thank you.
Councilwoman Furworth.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the work that you did, and Todd, to find a win-win solution to buy us the time for another 2 years. And I really appreciate the willingness for both parties to come together and take a look at a comprehensive plan. One of the things that I do look forward to, and I heard Todd say it as I was catching up on video since I missed the last meeting, was it buys time to also look at sponsorships. And when I think about Prescott Frontier Days and the rodeo and the amount of sponsors from the community and outside of the community, and I take a look at Christmas City and the hundreds of people, my husband and I donated and we got our name in the newspaper. They had hundreds and hundreds of sponsors. I think through the 234 emails we read, and between the businesses, the restaurants, the bike shops, the community, I think there's a way to go forward, exploiting sponsorships as well to help everybody give a little, put a little skin in and get a lot hold back. So I look forward to the next 2 years and keeping whiskey in town, in Prescott, and finding a way that everybody feels great where we end up 2 years from now. Thank you.
Councilman Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just a real brief comment. I do want to voice my support and really appreciate our city manager, Dallin, coming up with this solution for the next 2 years. I think there isn't a person on this dais that doesn't want to support the whiskey off-row, and we want to see it continue here in Prescott. And I look forward to a long-term solution with a city policy for all of the organizations that come to us for a sponsorship or a donation for their events. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel the same as everybody on the dais here today too, but I am very anxious to get a policy. We can't, at the end of the day, we're talking about taxpayer dollars here, and I do think the playing field has to be leveled. This is a wildly successful group of people, and on that graph there, as you can see, back in 2005, I think it was amount of money to help him get off the road to get to success. Once you reach that point of success, we have to really, in my mind at least, consider this as a business. We have to be able to support a percentage of what we're receiving back. It can't just be give of our taxpayer dollars to every organization that comes along. If we can get this down to where it's acceptable, we then have money to seed another event of some sort in our community. So I would like to see it be a little more equitable to the taxpayer. But I do think it's a great event, and I'm very anxiously awaiting some sort of a policy so that other events that want to come to our community have a clear vision of what that's going to mean and what it's going to cost to them. So I do support that effort, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thank you.
Well, I'll chime in on this too. I think in the previous meeting when we were discussing how much and to what extent we would support the whiskey off-road, I did make a very strong statement that these are taxpayer dollars. It's not our money, it's the taxpayers' money. And when we make an investment, we've got to be able to defend the use of that money for the benefit of the community and those taxpayers that are footing the bill. So I think we've been remiss over the years not establishing a policy to be able to be applied to these different events as they come forward, and a policy is definitely needed. I also think that the data that we're looking at to try to justify the expenditures is quite weak and easily extrapolated or interpolated to be used to the benefit of a person that is trying to acquire those dollars. I had a conversation with a world-renowned economist at Chapman University. His name was Jim Doty. And he referenced an old saying that statistics are like how a drunk uses a lamppost, more for support than illumination. So a lot of times you can manipulate that data to support your point of view, and it's not actually legitimate to be able to justify it. I think the Whiskey Off-Road is such a tremendous brand for our city. But branding is a difficult concept to be able to quantify, but it does exist. I think everybody agrees that, a strong brand can benefit a community or a business very effectively. So we have that to be considered as well. So I think being able to support this contract over the next 2 years while we acquire the data that we need to make a long-term decision, and also be able to defend our investment of taxpayer dollars. In the meantime, I think most people would say it's worthy of continuing this while we establish a policy and get the data that we need to be able to show that our expenditures of these tax dollars is well justified. So I think with that said, I think we're on unanimous agreement that we want to continue to support the Whiskey Off-Road over this next couple of years while we work on the policy and get more data to justify to what extent we continue to sponsor this and be able to support it in the long run. I'm sure we have some public comment.
We do.
Oh, good. Well, let's
Scott
hear it.
Badeau.
Hey, thank you. So it sounds like everybody's in support, but I just wanted to give a little bit of background. None of the people behind me nor I are affiliated with Epic Rides in any way. We're here because we love what the event does for the community. So yes, it is a for-profit venture, but one of the reasons why most bike race companies have gone out of business within a couple of years, and this one is going on its 22nd, is they do run a well put on event. And I think it behooves us to keep it in the community. Again, it sounds positive, but I just want to remind everybody the contract is expired. So it has technically left the building, so to speak, right? So I do think it behooves us to pass this 2-year contract to give some time to put any concerns at rest and make sure that the event doesn't walk away. We're not asking for any special treatment. We all volunteer at the event. I photograph a lot, so I see all the riders, the students, the coaches who ride with the students, the people who volunteer at the beer garden to raise money for the Education Foundation. I probably have the opportunity to see more than most. We're not asking for special treatment. We realize that we have to kind of earn our keep. And respectfully, I think the math is not to a level yet that I would be comfortable presenting. Every time I hear a number, it's different. I've heard that a while back we had the same organization who does the impact studies for the Super Bowl do it for us. And now we've recently chosen to go a different route. I don't understand that. I'm glad to see that we can maybe come back to a better model. But just to maybe give you a little bit of confidence, I've heard $134K is the total cost. That still doesn't add up because just earlier in the presentation, I heard $70K from from the lodging board and $40K in city services. That's only $110. But just using the $134K, that's $70K from the lodging board. They actually wanted to do more when I talked to Margot. They wanted to do $80, but we've already brought that down. And just the simple math on the city's current analysis is $1.8 million in direct spend. At the 2.95%, that's 53 and some change. So we're very close to making the number work. I know when I was on the school board, I always asked myself the risk of not doing something versus doing something. It seems like we're down to a very small number, even at a worst case, and we're willing to partner with all of you to prove the impact that we all feel. And so I'm just asking you yet again to please pass this. Don't let this event walk away. We all, and so many people who've sat in your chair before us for 22 years, put this thing together. And a lot of those costs have risen, but it's because the city has asked for additional things to kind of kill two birds with one stone. And say, hey, we've got 2,000 people coming in for a bike race. Why don't we have a concert, so that the entire community can enjoy it? Or, hey, we've started to have some pros show up. How much would we have to chip in to have like the world's best pros? And when you look at some of the students that I've had the privilege of coaching, watch those people come up and shake their hand and tell them like, hey, did you have fun out on the course, and kind of correlate their experience together. That is so much more than a bike race. It cannot be compared to a usual bike race. So thank you for your consideration. Please vote yes.
Jimena Flores.
Good afternoon. I'm Jimena Flores. I'm PIMBA's board president. And unfortunately, Todd could not be here today. So he had a medical emergency, and he has asked me to stand in for him and read a statement that he sent. So I'm going to, these are his words right now. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, city manager, and Prescott community. I and the entire Epic Ride staff are incredibly proud of the Whiskey Off-Road event, which we have had the privilege of building with the city of Prescott over the past 22 years. Our strong desire is to continue hosting this event here in Prescott for many years to come. This 2-year interim agreement will continue to be funded by the lodging tax revenues and allow us to begin planning for the 2026 event while simultaneously collaborating with you to develop an independent economic impact study. We believe this study will help us both understand the full value the event brings to Prescott, paving the way for productive negotiations toward the long-term agreement. We also want to extend a special thank you to the Prescott community for your consistent and unwavering support. All of you, thank you. I sincerely hope you will vote yes today on this agreement so that we can start working on the 2026 event immediately, as time is of the essence, given that the previous contract has now expired and the event requires 1 full year of planning. Thank you so much. Please vote yes.
Ian Wixon.
Good evening, council members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I brought a few show and tell items. This is the poster from the inaugural, the first running in 2004 of the Whiskey Off-Road. And the reason I brought this is I wanted to point out, down here at the bottom, it says for the benefit of Prescott Alternative Transportation. So right from year one, Epic Rides has striven to give back to the community, to create sort of a virtuous circle, to be a part of the community that they come into to do these events. Well, that list has grown. I bring this up here. This year, the beneficiaries were Prevent Child Abuse Arizona, Prescott Unified School District, Prescott Mountain Bike Alliance, Yavapai Food Bank, Yarnell Hill Recovery Group, Arizona Cycling Association, Prescott Creeks. So a total of 7 beneficiaries of the event. And I wanted to thank Councilman Montoya for pointing out that there are intangible benefits to this event that the dollars and cents can't account for. I really believe that this kind of an event does a lot more for the community than the dollars and cents. I think it really is a virtuous circle that it creates. And I think that Epic Rides has done a wonderful job of making that happen for this community. So I would like to encourage you to vote yes on the proposition. Thank you.
That's all, Mayor.
Well, very well. I think we've all had a chance to explain and quantify our interest in Epic Rides over the next 2 years. And I have a feeling with additional data and a good policy that's established, we'll be able to be confident in having Epic Rides and the Whiskey Off-Road here in Prescott for many, many years to come. So with that said, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve city contract number 2025-163.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Passes 7-0.
Well, I think I already gave you a nice quote to close the session here.
You did. We do have one more item, though, Mayor.
Oh, of course.
I'll keep this brief. This is our board, commission, and committee update. I was remiss because I was at a conference all week last week representing the Arizona Municipal Clerks Association at the International Municipal Clerks Annual Conference, and that I did not ask our council liaisons for updates on their boards and commissions, but let me do a real quick overview of the upcoming BCC meetings, and then if anyone does have something, now would be the time to do it. So on May 29th, which is this Thursday at 3 p.m., our Civic Enhancement Committee will review all of the annual applications for the Acker Trust Grant Awards. On June 3rd at 9:30 a.m., the Council Subcommittee on Water Issues will meet. Directly following that, the Council will have a special meeting for the general plan discussion. On June 4th at 9 a.m., the Mayor's Veterans Commission will meet. On June 5th at 11 a.m., our CDBG Citizens Advisory Committee will meet. On June 13th at 9 a.m., the Prescott Preservation Commission has a meeting. June 17th at 2 p.m., Airport Advisory Committee meeting. June 19th at 9 a.m., the Board of Adjustment. And then on June 19th at 3:30 p.m., the Civic Enhancement Committee will have their regular quarterly meeting. All of those meeting dates and times are subject to change, but that's what we have for now. Any updates from the council for their various boards and commissions?
Well, I will state that Councilman Grady will be taking over some of previous council member Kathy Rusing's assignments, but not completely. So I figured I talked to Patrick and said, we'll try to transition him here a little easier and take some of the less time consuming and more complicated assignments. We'll leave that to a little bit later.
Yes, and he and I did
So-
discuss that last week as well, so I'll get the updated list
Yeah, I'll
out.
let you know what that is. Well, thank you for that update. And like I said before, I can't say for sure that Jim Doty came up with that statement, but I thought it was one that's very, very applicable. So stating it again, that most people use statistics like a drunk uses a lamppost more for support than illumination. So with that said, this meeting is adjourned.